In today's workplace, things are evolving quickly and complexity is the norm, but clarity is a choice. This Week at Work is where leaders get practical solutions and timely insights for today's toughest workplace challenges.
Hi, I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association. Today we are going to have a conversation with Jay Samit, change agent amongst many other career accomplishments. Jay is also the keynote speaker for AIM's sold-out leadership conference coming up this May 15th. Hope to see you there. Jay, good morning. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. Look forward to being there in person.
Yeah, Jay, you have a lot of career accomplishments. It's almost hard to capture how I introduced you for this program. Why don't you just give us a quick overview of what your career has been, if you can do that in a quick way, and then let's get on to some Q&A.
I'm one of these guys that was way out doing this thing called the internet back in 1978, and the world came to where I was standing. That's the short answer.
1978. So I got introduced to the internet like in 1988. So you were 10 years ahead of me.
Yeah. There were a couple dozen people. But what was interesting is you could see the future. And so I've spent my career putting video on a computer, the first online auction, launching LinkedIn, working with all the people that, if you would have told me growing up that dozens of friends would become billionaires, I'd say, what are you smoking? But you notice a pattern, you notice how technology comes. And so I've spent the past decade really trying to teach people to prepare for what's coming, because the rate of change is faster than most organizations and most people can adapt.
Yeah, and it seems to be the case more so with this new technology we refer to as AI is happening around us, to us, with us at a rate that's faster than most of us can even keep up with, because many of us are still at that pre-early adoption stage, right?
Everybody's interacting with AI on average of 20 times a day. You just don't realize it. So when your GPS is telling you where to drive, when Netflix is recommending a movie, when Amazon says, would you like to also buy this? So much of what's going on, what you pay for an airplane seat versus the person that called at the same time from somewhere else. So AI is making a lot of decisions. But what we're going to see happen is my first book over a decade ago, I said half of all jobs will disappear in the decade. And when I spoke at Davos, the head of the International Monetary Fund was up before me, and she said a third of all jobs will disappear in the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh,
that's somebody with the data. So if you're not paying attention, here's the short answer. In the immediacy, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who's using AI better than you. And you're going to lose your company to a company that's using AI better than you. And that's what it comes down to. It's an amazingly powerful tool. And any shortcomings that you may think, here's what to remember. Today's AI is as dumb as it will ever be.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point. I know when I'm having conversations with the leaders, I'm like, first of all, AI always shows up. It's always there. It can work 24/7. And it's very smart. It's probably smarter than average. Yes. I mean, that most of us would agree with that.
It has the intelligence of the top 96% of all scientists, all educated professors. Yes, you won't meet somebody with that level of intelligence in almost any setting.
And we probably wouldn't hire them in our business.
Right. So now you can have the world's smartest person working for you, never asking for a raise, not wanting equity, not getting poached away. Think of it that way. And I'll talk about this more in person, but right now people are thinking of AI, okay, I could see how it'll replace some of the people that spend their lives at a screen like we're doing right now, because it can massage numbers and give them to the boss. You don't need that middle layer. It can do your taxes. It can do your legal contracts. But you're now going to see AI being put in humanoid robots. Yes, we're in the era of the Jetsons, okay? What does that mean? That means any job that was designed for a human figure to fit in there, a French fry chef, a truck driver, a warehouse worker, go on and on and on. There is now an employee that's willing to work for 40 cents an hour.
Yeah. So, all right. So tell us more when you say that, how do you, when do you see that type of transition occur? Like it's occurring. You just told us how it happens with Netflix and Amazon and many things. I went through the drive-through the other day for Panda Express, and it was an AI that took my order through the drive-through window. I will tell you, it was a great experience. I could hear the person. It said please and thank you, and asked me to pull around instead of going quiet and silent because, the human forgets to follow through with all those niceties. And my experience was better. Where do you see this starting for us in a more visible way, more conscious way where business leaders are making that decision?
Let me just finish your example. Had you gone through that drive-through window and ordered in Spanish or Portuguese or Chinese or Japanese
Oh
or
no,
Arabic,
I speak pretty poor English to begin with.
right,
Yeah, but it understood me.
it would understand all of those and answer in your native language.
Oh, nice.
So now we're
Nice.
talking about everybody can now have global reach. I'll share it in the speech, but one of our telcos in this country is about to announce that you can call anywhere in the world. You speak in English to somebody that only speaks Chinese. They will hear your voice in Chinese in live simultaneous translation, and they will answer in Chinese, but you will hear their voice speaking perfect English.
Yeah.
What does that do
Yeah.
for global business? What does that do for how we do? But take it down to the local level. If you now have all the annoying parts of business can be handled by an employee that doesn't sleep, doesn't quit, doesn't have to be retrained. And on the humanoid part of it, you've trained somebody on your system. Let's make it something simple in a warehouse where everything goes, how to take in shipping orders, how to do inventory. You've trained them everything. Okay. That person gets a different job. You have to start from scratch. If you train a robot, even if it breaks, its replacement knows everything that it knew. Or if you suddenly expand, you're opening a West Coast office or another warehouse, or you're expanding globally, you instantly have a fully trained workforce. I sit on the board of a company with one of the directors of Foxconn. That's the factories in Southeast Asia that make your iPhone, your PlayStations, all your electronics, very complicated. And if you remember, especially in the heart of America, for decades, we complained that all these manufacturing jobs went overseas. We lost all these blue-collar jobs. Well, Foxconn now has 9 lights-out factories. What's a lights-out factory? That's a factory where the lights are out because there's no employees. It's all automated. It's all robotics. So for those countries, they've now lost their single largest source of employment like that. So the disruption is coming at a massive scale. So it'll affect your customers. It'll affect your business. But look at the advantages. Look at how if you get ahead of the curve, you'll grab so much turf, you'll expand so quickly, the others won't have a chance to catch up. And the smart ones are already doing it.
Yeah, I think that's where I look at this, and there seems to still be resistance, right? There's resistance for so many reasons, different than I was the guy at the company at one time that approved who did and who did not get access to the internet, right? Like we were really careful that who we would allow to use the internet because one, we didn't understand it, and two, we were afraid they were going to play games or do something naughty on there, whatever it might be. You had to go through Phil Brandt. I was the internet police. Today, when the internet doesn't work, we send everyone home, right? It's like
Right.
there's no work to do because we can't work without it. And I would assume AI will take a similar evolution, but what would you say to business leaders that are still resisting this today, or the light bulb hasn't turned on for them just yet?
So having been in tech my whole life, I was always, why don't they get it? When you're young and cocky and it just seems so crystal clear. Anybody that has gray hair remembers when they said, a personal computer. I'm never having a computer in my home. Why would I need that? Right? Or when Steve Ballmer and Microsoft held up the iPhone and says it doesn't have any buttons. Nobody's ever going to use that as a phone.
I was one of those guys. I was, yeah.
So if you've noticed a pattern that you're consistently wrong, and by the way, I don't correctly predict the future, which I've done for decades because I have an oracle, some magic powers. I hang out with the people that are coding it and writing it, right? So I've consulted to Microsoft, I've consulted to Google, I work with all these people. And so it's really easy for me to see exactly what's happening when the price points come down. The easiest entry-level robot right now, they've just reduced the price from $15,000 to $5,000.
Oh, geez.
Okay. Now, is it perfect? No. But can it do a lot of stuff? Like I will tell you, within 5 years, you want to do a weekend project at home and you want to put up a cinder block wall around the backyard or something, just like you would get a tool that you could rent for the weekend, a backhoe from builders, from Home Depot.
Home Depot, yeah.
You're going to take home a Home Depot robot. And you're going to say, hey, I'm busy working in the backyard, and you'll be sipping your beer while it does all the work for you. So this isn't science fiction. This is happening now. The number one job on tax returns in this country is truck driver. On the Autobahn in Europe, there are big rigs that don't have people in them. And Tesla just announced a truck that does 500 miles on a charge, a big rig, 18-wheeler. But it just has to park to charge. Nothing has to be plugged into it. It gets the electricity wirelessly from the parking space. So this is happening. How are you going to adapt? Now, here's the positive. The positive is, here's what AI doesn't do until it gets complete cognition, which we can debate how many years off that is. It doesn't have your reasoning. It doesn't have your judgment. It doesn't have your collaborative skills, okay? It doesn't have your creativity. So use it as a tool, not get lazy. And so I'll give you a real interesting example. My most recent book, it's called The Second Act Advantage. If you're going to make it to 60, you'll most likely make it to 90. Your second career can be longer than your first one. But the advantages you have your second time are you have a network of people, you have experience, you have pattern recognition, you have all these great things.
I have experience finally.
And this is why older entrepreneurs make more money and get more money from funding. But when I completed my book, I wrote the best book that I thought I could. And my books have been successful. They're in over a dozen languages. But I went to the various AIs because I was chairman of one of the AI companies. And I said, I want this to be the best book on the subject. What's missing? That's the question you ask AI. It's like you have a partner. What am I doing wrong? What am I not seeing? What are my blind spots? And then one of the things that came out of that is I realized that every book that anybody's ever written for, work situations has two problems. One, it's out of date the second it's printed to paper. New stuff's happening, right? Mm-hmm. Number two, I don't know where you are in your journey when you're picking up. Were you just laid off? Are you expanding your business? What are your goals? So with the Second Act Advantage, I actually had my team build a custom AI that comes for free with the book.
Nice.
So you can privately ask all your stuff, not be afraid of what you don't know or how to use a tool. That's one of the problems that we see. The people in the C-suites don't want to admit to anybody else that they don't know what's going on, or they feel stupid. No one knew what was going on in the space 3 years ago. Okay. So everybody learned real quickly. I started an AI company, 7 years ago. But it'll be completely different a year from now. It'll be completely from 10 years now. Imagine if you just started learning to use a computer for the first time today. You would get to skip a whole lot of steps. You wouldn't have had to learn programming, the graphic user interface. So whenever you start, it's a very short road to be completely current.
I wouldn't have to go into DOS and do my C prompt.
Yeah.
Right? But
the idea now that you have to go in to make a spreadsheet, or you get a bunch of spreadsheets and you have to do some analysis. How does this compare to our last 5 years? What do we think our tax burden will be? Tie AI into real data. A ship is stuck in the Straits of Hormuz, okay? Does that have any of the parts we were expecting from China? If so, where else are they in supply chain? Where can I make an order today before everybody else pays attention? So the only competitive insight, the only competitive advantage any business has, whether you're a janitorial service or you're a car manufacturer, is getting insights from your data faster than the competition. So why wouldn't you want to have a tool that can do that, that has no ego, that doesn't want to take your job, okay? And you'll be amazed. So it really comes down to most people are using ChatGPT as if it's Google. Answer this question, tell me something. They're missing the point. Have it do research, have it do reasoning, have it answer the, existential things that the business needs. What's going to put me out of business? What's my blind spot? Read, I'm in HR. Read my last year's emails that I've sent out. What tone am I conveying? How could I improve? What am I overlooking in my communication to my team? Where are we having risks and exposure that we're not providing the right knowledge and response that can get us litigation?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want that?
Now, that's a great example because we stumbled on that ourselves. We weren't instructed to, but we took a year's worth of data and information inside of ChatGPT for our business here, and we basically asked it a series of prompts, great questions, and in short, we were saying, what are we missing? What are we doing too much of, not enough of? What are we missing? And the insight that came back was very good information. And we used our experience to shuffle through that and to understand that. I mean, it still took that human interaction, but there's not an employee in our business that could have been that precise based upon data in a matter of, moments.
But your experience and nuance and understanding the human dynamics, that was made better by having good data.
Data, yes.
It can't do that part that you added to that equation. And that's what's really interesting. I've been involved in some of the largest corporate mergers that are there. And one of the things at the beginning of merging two competitors is there's a real specific line of what you're allowed to do in antitrust and all kinds of stuff. But you have to know certain data from the other company. Well, now AI can be a walled garden that can look through all that without sharing any competitive information that would get you in trouble with antitrust. That didn't exist before. I remember having to, do keyword of, let's find every time, something says, Warner Brothers.
Find replace. Yeah.
And then you find, that somebody went to, a Warner Brothers movie that weekend and happened to mention that. And then they talk about their sex life. And now you have a whole committee of lawyers and everybody in the company now reading the email that this person should have never done as an email. But we've all seen that happen. So I don't see how you stay in business without this. And as we start getting a better level, the jobs are going away. So one of the things that drove me to write the Second Act Advantage is I flip it on the side. What business can you create now if AI is your only employee? You don't need capital anymore. You can do it in the cloud. You don't need any software. You can get all the analysis. I was working on a project this past week on a topic that I literally never had to deal with in my life. It's completely new to me. And AI prepared me for the conversation where, as if I had been a lifetime expert, that I could bring my point of view of disruption and what's happening and understand the challenges that this nation that has requested my services is facing. So governments are using this. It is a neutral tool, okay? It isn't good. It isn't evil. Does it make mistakes? Yes. Has it been trained on perfect data? Absolutely not. Has it been trained on biased data? I'll give you a great HR example. Google, Apple, Facebook, everybody in Silicon Valley is fighting to recruit the best of the best from all the universities, right? They're giant companies with huge plans for the future. But Google realized that people were leaving after a couple of years. They were getting poached. It wasn't a fit, right? And humans, as we know, are the worst interviewers. We have bias, we want people that we like. So they started to use an AI program to figure out who to hire, right? And the data was working. People were staying longer until somebody noticed an interesting pattern. AI would only hire men. That's against the law.
Now you have the attention of all of our female listeners, which is plenty.
You should have the attention of every employer that's listening, because you'll get sued for this. Here was the thing. The construct was, we want employees that will stay at Google the longest. Well, if your founders were men and your first employees were men, then the most seniority, the data was biased. It doesn't mean that men stay longer. It means so you have to be careful how you're phrasing the question, what you're looking for, because it can steer you down the wrong way. Please don't answer the question of which drive-through you were getting, but many of the services that are being sold for that right now were trained on Reddit and Twitter conversations. If you've ever watched the flaming anger of curse words, epitaphs, and everything that no one's mother has ever known that their children are saying, would you like when somebody drives through and says the wrong sentence and gets that type of a reaction at the drive-through window?
Yeah.
You're done.
You wouldn't. You're done, right?
Okay. The company gets tons of bad press, but whoever greenlit that, supervised everything. And so you really have to start playing with these tools to understand. I trust my team. Everything in the AI that comes with the Second Act Advantage was based on all my books, my Wall Street Journal columns, my Wired columns, Harvard Business Review, hundreds of speeches. But I still know how AI works. So we spent months trying to ask it every which way to trick it to say something evil and wrong. It still may happen, but I stand behind it that I did everything humanly possible. And I can't say that about other products that are racing to be the first one. So that's where you got to be careful in how you roll it out, but not to be employing it for some of the drudgery that no one wants to do.
Yeah. So
that's the joy.
Jay, I'm curious. So what would you say to the CEOs, the HR professional, anybody that's hiring another human? These would be some of the non-negotiables you would consider in my hiring practice of my next round of humans to work within our business. What would be some of the qualities, traits, skills? What might that be?
Collaborative, that doesn't change. Creative and takes initiative, that really doesn't change. Somebody that's done the same thing the way it's always been done for a long time, even though they got salesperson of the year or whatever, they're useless if they're not adaptable. It's about being adaptable. In most office settings, would you hire someone that didn't know how to use Excel or Word or just basic office skills in the electronic age? No. I can't imagine anyone hiring somebody that doesn't have some level of proficiency working with AI tools. That's the norm. That isn't cutting edge anymore. And here's the flip side of it. Here's where it gets really interesting. And I don't want to get too technical for people. No one has to learn how to code anymore. You can just literally say, make me a website. I want it like this website. I want these things on it. And boom, there's your website. Right?
Yeah.
Make me an app. I need the app to do this, that, and that. Boom, there it is. If your instructions weren't clear, you say, no, change it. It needs to do this. And that's it. There's no learning this intermediate language of how to talk to the computer. The computer understands English better than we do. Okay. But the next step, which is hard for people to visualize if you don't participate in the parent step, is what's called agentic AI. It sounds like a fancy word. It means agent. You're making an agent. So think of the old days of travel. You call a travel agent. My wife and I would like to go to Europe for 3 weeks. We want to see these 3 cities. We want to leave from this date to this date. We want to stay at nice hotels, but not above this price point. And our favorite thing is fine dining if there's any Michelin restaurants. That person was an expert. They knew other travel agents. They called, they did everything, right? Today, you couldn't do that with just in one step with Google. You couldn't do that with any of the travel sites. If you don't know the restaurants, you don't know the hotels, you don't know the walking distance. With Agentic, you make an agent say exactly what I just said right now. Agent, go do it. And by the way, it's not just my wife and I, it's a family reunion. My grown son who lives in this city and one lives in that city, or they already know that. Figure out the dates so we can all be there to celebrate together, get us tickets to whatever shows, and just tell me what it's going to cost before you buy. And
you know that now I'm just going to stop you right there because there's someone I'm sure listening to this. Oh, well, that's going to be impressive in the future when it happens. I'm going to tell you, we took a trip this holiday season during the Christmas New Year's break, and we did just that minus the family reunion, and it then we didn't believe it, right? We didn't believe this was our best option, best pricing, best hotel choice, blah blah blah. And so my wife had to go on and check everything, double check it, and she goes, "It's right." And I had the answer literally in like 10 seconds. I mean, it didn't take any time at all, and built the agent to do that. So my point is that's already here.
Oh,
Yeah,
and the more you use it, just like if you've ever had an executive assistant, you
right.
know, 10 years in, you just have to look at the person. They know exactly the whole conversation. You have shorthand between. I do that with AI. I spend my life on a plane. I've given speeches in 60 plus countries. I mean, I'm always doing it, but I'm very particular about this, that, and that thing. Not because I'm special, just it takes the hassles out of travel. And so I had to do something in Barcelona. Now, never mentioned this to the AI. One of my favorite hotels in the world happens to be in that city because I just like the way it's decorated. I like its location, like everything. Like they figured it all out, right? Sure enough, that's where I was booked. And I'm like, wow, it knows me, right? It
Yeah.
gets me. And imagine if you're somebody that's vegan or somebody that wants to know this, that, or the other, whatever it might be, where's the best jogging trail? You know, I can't imagine not wanting to get the most out of every day, both as a professional to grow and to learn, to make your job more enjoyable and be more successful, make your company grow and successful. But in your relationships with others, AI does a ton of stuff. In with the digital J, that's what we call the one with second act advantage. Most of us aren't very introspective about what really we are and what we like and what we don't like. So in a non-threatening way, we took all those psychic psych eval tests and let them interact with the AI to say, oh, you like working with others, you like working with your hands, you like speaking, to give you career advice of how to further your journey to success in a way that is joyous. And to me, that's where it all comes in. Anything that takes friction out of our lives, we embrace.
Awesome.
Why wouldn't you want that? There's nothing scary.
So Jay, super excited about the conference coming up. We're a month away. It always is a wonderful conference. We had some of the most amazing keynotes, and I know you will be also. But maybe in just setting the stage a little bit for some of the things you've done on your website and the material I've read, you've met and worked for some very, very interesting people. I see Steve Jobs on there. I see the Pope. I see the president. I mean, you've got a long list of people you work with. Maybe just leave us with a little bit of interesting, fun fact. Who did you enjoy meeting the most and why? Working for the most and why?
Okay, so of hugely successful people, multi-billionaires, all that are household names, you want me go in public and say, this one I like better than all the other ones, okay? Not going to happen.
No, that's true. I wasn't trying to set you up.
I will say, Pope John Paul II, I was surprised how warm and I don't want to say regular guy but you didn't feel like intimidated by what we were doing. Um, Working in the White House and realizing that you can make global change, that changed me.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody, it doesn't matter if they're famous or not. You learn from everybody in every experience. The world we're all want the same things. And the idea that the last thing, so if I have a confession, I never learned another language. It just took too much work. I have a son
Yeah.
who's fluent in Japanese and Chinese, and it's amazing and whatever. And most of the world was done in English, so I could be lazy. But the idea now that I can do interviews just like we're doing now, and they think I'm speaking Polish or they think I'm speaking Lithuanian, because my books are in those language. I gave a speech in Italy where everybody in the room thought I was Italian. I mean, this is amazing to me. And the funny thing is, then you get all the inbound emails in those languages because they think you're a native speaker. But AI translates them for me and lets me respond. So that last barrier that separates us, and that makes the world a real tighter community. And that's so
That's a
much
good thing.
of
That's a good thing.
what I hope technology would be is bringing us together. And
Yeah.
some aspects of social media and stuff have been weaponized for profit to make anger. And so I'm hoping that AI, we're using it for the right ways. And I think the leaders in the companies that are at that conference will see and embrace that. And by getting on board early, can change the trajectory of how AI becomes a positive force for all of us.
Excellent. Now, I do have to be honest in closing this out, and I have enjoyed the conversation, but we also use the AI to book your travel to here to St. Louis. And it starts out on the Greyhound bus, and then it's moving you to an Amtrak, and it gets you close. And from there, you're going to have to catch an Uber. But it assures me you will arrive on time on May 15th. So we look forward to seeing you then, Jay. I can't wait to meet you and have our audience meet you and hear what you have to say.
Oh, thank you so much. One quick plug before I go, because I'm so
Please
excited.
do.
So next week, my book finally comes out. You'll be the first
Yes.
place I'm speaking since it's out. So if anybody
Awesome.
gets it on Amazon or any of that, I'll be hanging around to autograph or do anything you want. It's really the first custom book, a book that's custom to you because it comes with that free AI. So super excited to meet everybody. Super excited.
Is that available now or it comes out
It's
next
available
week?
on Amazon right now. It ships on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. You'll
Okay.
get it in your hands. So if you're a fast reader, you will have read it and have lots of questions when I'm there. And that excites me because the most fun part, the most rewarding thing, which is the question I think you were trying to ask, the biggest surprise of my career was writing my first book because I thought it was a one-way, a monologue. Here's what I have to say. But I heard from readers in 140 countries. People were thirsting for this knowledge and they were thanking me. I call them love letters, that it inspired it. It gave them the tools to flourish. I didn't do the work they did. So that's why I keep writing, to help people. There's no money in writing, but it was an amazing thing that I never anticipated. To hear from a dentist in Pakistan or, someone in South America, a young man in school in Ethiopia just reached out to me with what he was working on. And like, that's what is exciting about the world. And that's what AI can bring to everybody. So see you and bring with your questions. And I can't wait to meet everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us on This Week at Work, and we will be back online next week with another guest. We'll see you then, Jay. We look forward to seeing you in May. Until then, let's go out and let's be good to somebody. Thank you.